We are back. Thank you for joining us. Anyone who gave input in the last one, thank you so much. The huge level of interaction we have has largely informed what we're going to be covering in this video. So a couple of things to just go over before we jump in. We got some timestamps, use them at your convenience. If you don't want to know about compressors, but you do want to know about airbrushes, then just jump between the two, that's absolutely fine. If you've got any questions or comments or suggestions for the next video, pop them below, that would be amazing. And finally, quite importantly, I guess, a lot of people's, just the feeling a lot of people have, and I get this because I felt like it before I got my first airbrush, a lot of people just want the decisions to be made less intimidating for them, which I get. There's a lot of choice out there, so everything that I discussed in this episode we have popped on the AO store in the airbrushes section. There's a couple of bundles there and you can chop and choose between all these items, and if you're interested you can pop them in your cart, and if you've got any questions on the specifics, we do know about them, we do stock them, so we'll do our best to give you the best answers to suit whatever question you have in particular about one aspect of them or the other or stuff like that. So without any further ado, let's jump into talking about different types of compressor, noise, tanks, all of that jazz. Let's just jump straight in. So we're actually going to start out with a close comparison of my compressor. It's a slightly fancier version of my compressor, and we're going to go from higher budget, and then we'll do medium budget, and then we'll do lower budget, and you could also say they are advanced, intermediate, and beginner. I think that's incorrect though. I'll explain that more as we go on. So essentially I'm going to run through the characteristics of the fancy compressor, and then when we come to the others, we'll discuss which bits of that you don't have, and you can make up your mind, whether that's something that would matter to you. So the first compressor is the Smart Jet Plus handle tank compressor. I nearly said Pro there because that's one that I've got. So one of the first things to cover about this compressor, I can cover very well. I'll let it do the talking for me. So probably, as you can hear there, this compressor is quiet. Now, they are slightly different. The one that I'm talking about here, it's got a very clever handle design where it's got a baby 450cc tank in it, I think, something like that. So about half a litre capacity, and it's just hidden in the handle of the compressor. It's just a very clever design. That is not a large enough tank for it to be able to run off for a significant amount of time, but basically that means that it's going to fill that tank. The tank will, the pressure will come down from the tank, and then when the pressure gets low enough, it will fill it again. I've not done my hose up tight enough, that's why it's carrying on going. There you go, fixed. So as I was saying, that compressor is just going to fill its tank, tank will empty, fill its tank, empty, fill its tank, empty, which is how all tank compressors work, but it's quite a small one, so it's still going to be refilling quite regularly. It's extremely compact, it looks incredible. This one doesn't have a bash-proof case on, but they are very durable, and it also is capable of going up to a decent enough pressure that you could run 2 airbrushes off it at once. All of the compressors that we're going to talk about here can run up to 60 psi, which is about, I think, the maximum that anyone would want to run for in our industry. You're not going to be blowing leaves off your porch with this. Very compact, extremely convenient, an expensive option for sure. If you would like any testimony to how long this lasts though, mine, which is the same engine as this one has, it just doesn't have the tank, is 15 years old and is still going strong. I have replaced my hose 3 times, I believe. All of those are because I've sat my chair leg on my hose and broken it because I'm an idiot. So that's user error. It's got a handle tank, which means that people would say it's portable. It's still a lump of metal. It's the lightest of the compressors we're going to cover, which is a plus for some people. But whenever people say compressors and transportability, you're trying to transport something that isn't really the type of thing you want to transport. So you're still going to have to put it in a box and take care of it, and it's not light. Unless you've bought like the Iwata Ninja Jet or something, which is one of these little baby ones for salons, which you can't adjust the pressure on, but is whisper quiet and is extremely smart. I would argue that they're not particularly transportable. If, however, a couple of times a year you go to an event or you go over to your mates and you paint there, then that could be a plus for you. It's just smart. It's a sexy piece of kit. You're carrying this little handle, and the handle actually is hollow, and the handle is a tank. It's kind of a swanky one. I'd say it's the visually it looks awesome. It's definitely one of the natural comparisons from the fancy airbrushes if you do want to get something with all the bells and whistles on it. Got the stuff that I said is mandatory, moisture trap. You can change the pressure on it, that type of stuff. It will run from very low to very high, but that's the same for all the compressors. So that is the Smart Jet Plus, not Pro, nearly said it again. But yeah, it's a brilliant piece of kit. I can sign off on that one. I've used a slightly cheaper version of one of those for nearly half my life now, and it's still going strong. Okay, so the next compressor we've spoken about, which, let's call it the intermediate one. It's, you'll see it's far from intermediate in terms of its capabilities, is the catchily named 620TX. Oh, it's going to take me forever. Okay, so the next compressor we're going to talk about is the Sparmax TC620X. Perfect. That's taken me about 5 goes. Anyway, this compressor is basically a bit of a beast. Even if it falls in the, like the intermediate bit between the super fancy one and the more beginner friendly one or the cheaper one, it's a monster. So this is a double piston compressor. It speaks of zero maintenance. The most important thing about this is it comes in a bash-proof case. It's pretty durable. It is a hefty unit. A unit it is. It is heavy. It has a 2.5 litre tank, and it will last for forever. So when I was talking about smaller or larger tanks being more or less volatile as far as temperature goes, and also having to fill its own tank less, it'll switch on for quite a while to fill up that tank, but then it'll switch off for a long time because it'll be able to run for a long time from 2.5 litres worth of pressure. Funny note from one of our viewers, do remember to switch these off at night, because the bigger ones, the larger the compressor gets, the larger the tank gets, blah, blah, blah. You might be awoken at 3 in the morning by quite a hefty onslaught as it fills up its tank, completely unnecessary at that point. So just a funny note there from one of our viewers, but a good point. Mine chunnering away in the background, not so bad, but the bigger the compressor gets, the more of a thing that is. And particularly if you've got like a garage level one, they are not quiet. This one is a bit of a beast, basically. That kind of describes all of it. You can run 2 airbrushes from it super easily. It'll last forever. You don't need to do much to it. And it is up to any task apart from possibly spraying your car that you could think of needing a compressor for. So all-round monster. Does come with the downsides of being bigger, heavier, and a little bit noisier as a result though. So the next compressor we're going to talk about, I've already forgotten the name of. God, my memory. Okay, so the next compressor on our list, or the final compressor on the list, is the Sparmax AC501X. This is a super solid beginner's compressor, so things that you might consider outside of its, pretty economic price point for a pretty durable piece of kit is its size. It falls kind of, in terms of how compact it is, it falls between the Iwata and the previous Sparmax, so it's not a beast. It does not have a big old tank. You can squirrel it away by your feet. It's still in a bash-proof case, which is nice and useful, and has all the bells and whistles that we'd expect. So all of these compressors go up to 60 psi, have a moisture trap, and you can change the pressure on, which are 3 specifics you needed. You need to be able to pick the pressure and have a good variety of pressures, both for delicate work and for cleaning, or different applications of airbrushing. You need to be able to get rid of moisture, and that's basically it, really. That's what you need. This one's just, no bells or whistles. It just is what it is. Great starter piece of kit, but it will still last for ages. Doesn't have a tank, but like I said, I've got a pretty trusty protective case, no tank compressor down there. I don't have issues with it. If I were to buy again, I would buy one with a tank, but I've not got any issues with it, and I don't feel I need to replace mine. There are pluses to the tank. Definitely, objectively, a tank will give you a better piece of kit or a longer lasting piece of kit, but if you get a good piece of kit, they last forever anyway, and it just depends, how much the noise is an issue for you. So I don't know what this is in terms of decibels, but it's not a level that I have any issues with when I'm painting. However, I would do everything I could do to keep it to a minimum, because it's not a particularly nice noise there. And if you are looking to just, zen out a bit, pop on an audiobook or some music, the quieter the better, in my opinion. Obviously, kind of doesn't really need saying, but I wouldn't say that any of the compressors we've picked are prohibitively loud. We've chosen that because a lot of people mentioned wanting to be able to do it indoors and stuff like that. So that is our rundown of the 3 compressors that we've covered. Let us know your thoughts, feelings, if we've missed anything that's important about them, or if you've got any specific questions about any of those compressors, or anything whatsoever, really. Now to some things that I can actually remember the name of. I'm going to talk about 2 airbrushes here. I use both of them. And again, kind of like the compressor debate, where people are like, well, do you need an airbrush made of aluminium, or is weight that important? Weight is important. That's part of the reason you see me with the back end off my airbrush a lot. I can just shave some grams in a oneer by not doing that. It's not the be all and end all though, just like having a tank is not the be all and end all of a compressor. Having something heavy in your hands for extended periods of, heavily concentrating, probably holding breath times, it's not very helpful. And I, speaking from the standpoint of someone who's painted, I've had a few stints that were more than 10 hours long with an airbrush in my life. Far too many, actually. specialized commission painting. And having something lighter is only going to be a plus in those senses. Even if it feels a bit weird at first, you can't argue with that being a good idea. No one asks for a metal paintbrush. So yeah, let's jump in and have a look at it. And I'm just going to weigh some parts basically. Here are 2 airbrushes. What are we looking at? Now you'll notice that I've removed these. I'll keep banging on about it, but unless you're using the function here, this is to stop your airbrush from being able to go back past a certain point, thus enabling you can get your lines a predictable width. It's a quick release, which is super practical. So the auto stop on this brush is one of the things that it has against others. This is an extremely light brush. Everything about this is pretty low profile. Obviously it looks incredibly awesome. Other adjustments from the other one are it's got a slightly taller trigger, which enables a slightly increased degree of specificity, managed it just about, and control. So being able to find the bite of where paint is released or not is exquisite on this brush. It weighs nothing. And to back that up, we have got some kitchen scales. So for me, this is the main difference, as I said. None of these weights are going to sound like a lot, but you know, something being half the weight of something else is fairly significant. So all bells and whistles, 50 grams. Now, if you don't use the back end, which I frequently don't, 40 grams. Do bear in mind, if you're using a quick release or something like that, you'd be adding this ×2 add a bit, I guess. So bringing that weight up there, but basically this is a really light piece of kit. I use a cap on regardless, always, and I always use a crown cap with the H&S ones because the other one's ugly. Just don't think it looks very nice. Solid reasoning there, I know, but yeah, this is a very, very light piece of kit. Everything that's there internally is at a really high level of precision, and if you care about it, these bits are real gold. So you know, all singing, all dancing, all bells and whistles, has the options, and the back end performs more function than it does on other airbrushes. For other airbrushes, it's for just aesthetics, arguably balance, although I prefer mine without the back end on, but this does have a function of being able to wind it up and down, preset it and not, and quick release it, and get it back there is, you know, super useful. So you can click that on and off if you're panel lining, for example, down tanks, and all the panel lines will max out at the same width. I pull mine back all the way quite a lot for flushing, so I find that it doesn't perform as much of a function with me, but also I don't spend all of my days painting tanks on reps, so more useful for that. Now let's pick up another one. This is just a normal airbrush here. It's got a larger cup on, the other one had the baby cup, which I'll talk about in a second, and does make a bit of a weight difference, but this is a normal airbrush, and that's a normal airbrush weight, around 100 grams. Less. Less, but at this stage arguably you are affecting the balance. It just depends how front heavy you want to be with them. That's it really. Both of them are up to a proper level of physical abuse that they can endure, as long as you're not ploughing the needle into something, which is why a lot of people don't use a cap. It's not right or wrong. I'm clumsy, so for me it's wrong, and some people prefer to have larger cups, smaller cups, all of that jazz. The difference between these is going to be a fair bit. You didn't even register. Okay, yeah, so it is a fair bit. But yeah, that's it. So as far as being super swanky, having the maximum level of quality on all of its internal parts, and being made out of aluminium, which just weighs nothing, as well as looking gorgeous. This one is this is the holy grail of ones that are relevant for miniature painting. You know, you could talk about a custom micron from Iwata or something like that. We're not doing fine art here on, you know, painting hairs on a 2D a painting. We're working on models, and for me, I think this is about as fancy as you could possibly need to go. This one is a beast, and obviously I choose to use this one quite a lot, so I've got plenty of love for this brush. Quick little note about the baby cup. Why this is particularly useful, as well as it, you know, weighing less and looking dinky, is your line of sight down the airbrush becomes completely unrestricted. So often down an airbrush you got this in the way. That's quite a big piece, you know, when it's in front of you, between you and the model. Now with you being left-handed or right-handed, which you can change around on this trigger, you're kind of looking off to the side at a side angle anyway, but you know, you can just choose to not have something in your way. And with a slightly larger well that these have, which comes with the downside of being a little bit more finessey for cleaning or finicky. It does mean that you can fill that with a couple of mils of paint, which is enough to work for a significant time, unless you're base coating armies, in which case you just use a different cup and it doesn't matter. It's a real plus. I love this. I think it's one of the, it's one of the smartest, simple things you can change about any airbrush. Regarding the trigger, by the way, a few people have asked about airbrushes being right or left-handed. So to make this airbrush right or left-handed, all we do is this. So I use it like this because I'm a righty. If I was a lefty, I'll twist it around. That feels weird, and I'd use it that way. So normal airbrushes they'll just have a round trigger. It won't have a shoulder on it. I really like the shoulder. I feel it's nice. It gives me a slightly increased degree of control and comfort, and that lets me just doctor it for whether I'm right or left-handed. And if I'm with someone else, I can just pop it out, turn it around, and put it on lefty setting. This is exactly what the stop does. See, as I loosen that, it will allow me to go back further, and you can quick release it on or off, so it can go all the way back if you want, and put it back on by pressing it. There we go. Put it back on. So it's there if needed. Equally, if we take all of this back end off, if you ever wanted to specifically choose the tension level of your trigger, this tensions or not, the spring that presses on that's not an option on the other one. So if you think that they might be useful things for you in the future, great. Buying this one will not, you're not going to be missing out by having a simpler brush. Actually, the way I would think of it is, if you do want a fancy one in the future and you get this one, you can always just keep this one for heavy duty stuff, base coating, applying varnishes, that type of thing, general use and abuse, wear and tear, and then you keep your other fancy brush for fancy stuff. But you can use that fancy brush for absolutely everything you can use the others for. They've both got 0.4 needles in. You can change them out in the future if you want to. So hopefully that gives people enough information to kind of consider between the two. Let's jump in now to seeing what we do with a common question that people have the moment anyone asks about airbrushing. It is cleaning and maintenance. So I'm not going to be using an ultrasonic cleaner here. I'll link to an Angel video. He uses one, I don't. They're a fine option. I'm going to show you how you can clean without having one of those available to you. There's nothing wrong if you do want to use one, and actually they're a pretty dinky piece of kit and quite convenient. This has been a very popular question. Of course it is. I had questions about this. Health and safety, airbrushing, all the permutations, etc. Now, where I stand on it is that everyone needs to pick their own level that they are happy with and do some research and look into it. Things to hold in mind. Acrylic paints are pretty benign. Water-based paints. These companies have such ridiculous health and safety hoops that they have to jump through. Stuff has to be sellable in California. We know that isn't easy. That stuff could practically be drank without any damage to the user, and you just end up, with a blue mouth or whatever. I'm not recommending that anyone drinks paint, obviously. However, there are a lot of things in our hobby, going all the way through the spectrum, through enamels and stuff like that, not great, to cleaning products, and cleaning products are what I want to talk about. So if you're going to take anything with extreme precaution, it should be stuff like this. Not this brand, I'm not picking on this brand, but any cleaning product. They are made to aggressively strip paint from an airbrush which potentially hasn't been used for 6 months, that is dried on there, rock solid. They are aggressive chemical compounds. You wouldn't drink WD-40, so if at any point your mask is particularly important, it is whilst using cleaning products or doing cleaning tasks. So hold that in mind. Be safe, don't be an idiot. But a lot of people, I think they care too much about while they're using their quite benign paints, and they'll like stop it, and then they'll take it off. Oh, that's free. I'll clean my airbrush now. That is the wrong way round. If anything, if anything, wear it all the time, but definitely wear respiration and stuff whilst using aggressive cleaning chemical compounds to strip paint off your metal airbrush. Okay, so cleaning your airbrush. What we're going to do first is I'm going to grab one that I've used more recently, and I'm just going to see if any, because I feel like I gave this a little clean, at least by my standards, which are quite minimal. At the end of my last session, we'll see if there's anything left over in here that shouldn't be. So I feel that I've given this a pretty thorough clean. However, what we're going to do is get out our pointy cap. See that bubbling away in there? I do like foaming cleaners. I use them quite a lot. So it doesn't feel like we've got anything that we shouldn't have in there. No? Okay, so with this being white, obviously that gives us the ability to check. Seems like we are good. I'm going to do a thorough breakdown clean now. Here's one I prepared earlier. I started preparing this one months ago because it's not been cleaned for months. So we can see it's already got some crap inside the cup, the baby cup, and there's some spots and bits around. We're going to try and basically get this back to factory fresh, which I think will be quite useful for people. Between colours, just take a bit thinner, run it through. That's generally going to be fine. You know, maybe wash out the cup or something if you've got some smears in there. I'm going to try and take this thing through to absolutely perfect level, and we'll see how long that takes. Before we begin, tools I'm going to be using are this. I've actually run out of my favourite foaming cleaner. I use foaming cleaner and liquid reamer. They're both aerosol based products. They're very good. As I've already touched on, make sure you mask up when using stuff like this. Just a normal airbrush cleaner, got one here from Media. And then this is just the thinner that I use normally during airbrushing. As far as equipment goes, a couple of important pieces. Currently, the best cotton buds I have found available are Tamiya's. They come in 2 sizes. These are the baby ones. They're going to be particularly helpful. And then I've got some of their larger ones if required. Finally, last but not least, I've got the little cleaning kit from H&S. And in that is a wonder tool that we'll touch on later, and a couple of pipe cleaners. There's also this cap, which is made for putting on the end of your airbrush to help it backflush. But you can do that by pinching it, so I won't be using that for this one. Anyway, that's all the stuff. Let's get to the thing. So let's have a little look at this airbrush. First steps first is I'm going to actually hook it up, and I'm going to run some stuff through it in order to just flush it through in that way. See if there's any bits there that can be shifted. Probably not though, given that it's not been used for months. I'm going to nab that crown cap, otherwise this video may well include me ruining an airbrush needle. I guess it'd be educational for people at the very least. So straight away, this this trigger, that should not be a thing. That's like a very old car wheel, and that is because I've got some crap in there. So we're going to have some work to do on this one. Let's start off though just by flushing a little bit of this through. Now, because this stuff is aggressive, you've got some pretty high quality rubber seals in your airbrush that you want to maintain. If you're ever using the really aggressive stuff, make sure that you finish by going through with airbrush cleaner or thinner and scouring that off, because it might continue to work on the seals in the airbrush, and there's something you want to maintain. So nothing seems to be coming out that's particularly colourful. I can start getting the cotton buds out, and we'll give everything a disassemble and polish. This is a piece which comes with the Infinity. It's not needed for the other brush. You shouldn't ever really be tightening any part of your airbrush overly. There's not a practical use to it. So you're going to get rid of that needle first. Oh, I can see why we've got problems in here. Stuff just feels a bit slimy. Okay, that's it. I'm going to set the needle off to the side just so I can't damage it. You know, I'll keep on going on about the tip. The tip is important. Basically, every single thing in this, I'm going to go through and I'm going to wipe down using whatever cleaner I choose to use. You could use extremely strong alcohol, IPP, something like that. The bit that I'm particularly concerned with is the bit around the trigger mech. The trigger itself and the spring, they feel a bit sticky. And anywhere where you can just see it not looking 100% shiny, you don't want grime anywhere. There's not going to be a plus to it. And then we'll spend some time in the body, in the middle of the airbrush. And then we will go to probably culprit number 1 for most people, which is the nozzle. So all you're going to see now is me going through these pieces one by one. I'll put it on a time lapse. There isn't much to learn. Make sure that you don't leave any fibers behind. If you are using tissue paper, you can choose to use a microfiber cloth that doesn't molt if that's the case, but the most important thing is just to get everything super clean and super shiny. For me, this is like a once every 6 month task, really. The most important thing is to clean your airbrush as you go, which is the same for any brush. You know, it's the same for Series D. Right, we've time-lapsed the rest of that because it was fairly repetitive. Now we're going to get to the nozzle, which if we're going to have any issues, this little boy is going to be where they are located. So let's pop a cotton bud in and see if we've got anything in there. It seems to be all right. This is where problems are for people generally. You can see the cotton bud's not coming out white, but I think it's in pretty good condition. Obviously, if you would prefer to wear gloves whilst handling products like this, then you should. Okay, so we're looking pretty good in there. So maybe I'm not going to be able to show you the most out of this wonder tool. This is a little piece of magic though. So what this is made for is just popping in there. And if you had any unwanted crap, it would shift it, and you would be surprised. I've got little donuts out of this. I've had little rings of rubbery paint collecting in there, and a lot of the issues you have, this is going to be where they're from. So we're all good now. That's the final bit. I'll give this a little bit of a polish just to make sure there's nothing dry left in there. But past that point, we're going to put everything back together, and I'm going to lube up the threads. Got some super lube here, of course.
There's always time for lubricant!
I'll lube up the threads, and I'll show you where to drop lube in behind the trigger, and then hopefully we should have a wonderfully smooth operating airbrush. Okay, so notice I've not put the needle back in yet. Tiny bit of lube on my fingers. That's feeling much better. And then the spot where I put it is just a little bit behind the back of the trigger, not too much, and then a little bit in front at the base here. Wipe it down so we don't have anything stick on it, and that should be absolutely perfect. That'll feel brand new at this point. Okay, so let's jump into one of the most commonly asked questions about airbrushing specifics. What pressure should I airbrush at? Now, this is an impossible question to answer, period. This is completely impossible to answer without a surrounding set of information. Like much stuff in the hobby, how do I paint someone's hair? What color is it? What brand of paints are you using? Do you like matte? Do you like gloss? Blah, 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 blah. And it's the same with pressure. So when I asked this question, I was surprised at the variety of answers I got from our signature artists. These guys are award winners, heroes, legends of painting in their own rights, and they all do stuff at a different level. So what we're going to be doing with that is I am going to be doing a particular episode on dilution and pressure. I think just those two is enough for an entire episode. I'll go why you would use it higher or lower. But what I would say is go and check out Kirioth TV's channel. I am giving him a complete introduction to airbrushing remotely. Recorded that yesterday. It'll be out on his channel pretty soon, I imagine, where I just take him from zero to actually doing some pretty good work. And we have a chat about a lot of the reasons why you'd use higher pressure or lower pressure or stuff like that. As a default though, if you're going to get in there really delicately, probably going to be using it a little bit lower, anywhere from 15 or 20 PSI. And then if you're undercoating an army or you're doing big tanks or, for any other reasons, you're using thicker paint, using different bands of airbrush, some run lower, some run higher, more readily, then maybe you go up to, even 40 PSI and 50 for cleaning. So anywhere within the spectrum of 15 to 50 is viable for different uses. I will give a better answer, and we'll run through some rules and reasons why you would use different pressures for different tasks and stuff like that. And hopefully I'll be able to give you guys some type of internal flow chart where you're like, right, well, my paint is this thick, it's from this brand, and I'm doing this type of topic. Probably I need to be lower or I need to be higher. So that's that one. What size needle should I have? Now this is pretty similar to the dilution one in theory. However, I think for the majority of people, there's a very, very simple answer to this. I alluded to this in the last episode, or spoke about it fairly clearly actually. Bigger is better for a wider variety of things. And what I mean by that is if you want to do a wide variety of things, you do not want a teeny tiny needle. So for example, the airbrushes that I've covered, this has got a 0.4 in. I would recommend for any beginner in the world or intermediate, somewhere between a 0.35 and a 0.6. Anywhere there, you'll be fine. These are 0.4s. I started with a 0.5 with my first airbrush. They're absolutely brilliant. The moment you get less than about 0.35, maybe 0.3 at a push, you're just using more specialist thing and your dilution has to be more perfect and stuff like that. It's not forgiving, and you restrict the paint brands that are easy to put through that, or you just have to put hours into, you know, like mixing up a perfect juice in a little dish and then tipping it in and all that type of stuff. So for me, somewhere a little bit above or below 0.4, 0.5, that's the spectrum that you should be in for a beginner. Now, these airbrushes, the nozzle is not fixed, so you can take the nozzle out and the needle out, and you can swap these from a 0.4 to a 0.2 or a 0.15 or whatever it is that you want. So you do have the option of that in the future with these brushes in particular. They are my opinions on it. I would value everyone else's opinions on, you know, what you think is the best needle size. I'm pretty happy with 0.4 or 0.5 though. Works absolutely fine for me for pretty much everything that I do. Another very, very commonly asked one, is it messy? And by this, I can restrict this on myself, I'll clarify it myself. I mean, is it messy to your surrounding area, your painting area? A little bit is basically the answer. I airbrush on top of something this size quite frequently. I've got a large one that I started using for this reason, but I get a bit of overspray around the edges. If I'm doing like army scale stuff, I just wipe my desk down. If I had a different type of desk, I would protect it in a different manner. I don't particularly love my desk that much, so it just gets cleaned with, you know, like literally like just thinner every so often at the end of an army project. If you have a bigger protector, you'll protect a wider area, and generally speaking, it's only if you're doing like large scale army stuff, batches and batches, you have to worry about this. If you're using your airbrush for your, you know, your 5 Necromunda models and you're doing some glow effects on them, you have nothing to worry about whatsoever. The surface you're airbrushing over, if you are concerned about mess, make it more absorbent. So we're going to be coming out soon. I don't have one close, but the more engraved the texture palette is, the more absorbent it is. So we're going to bring out one soon that is particularly helpful for airbrushing over and is a larger size to protect desks for that reason. But you could be doing it over felt, even doing it on paper. Paper is far more absorbent than a plastic desk. So yeah, bear that stuff in mind. If messes are concerned, the only thing you really need to worry about is if you've got a pristine, lovely model, just don't sit it behind your area, put it to the left and it'll be fine. Right, dilution. I'm not even going to touch this one today. We will in a future episode. Please let me know all the specifics that you would like to know about dilution. Like, I find diluting for OSL difficult, or I can't dilute for transitions, or I struggle with red. Whatever it is, let me know about that and we will address it in our dilution and pressure video and make sure that we give you a super comprehensive guide on it though. Just one tip, put thinner in before you put anything else in your airbrush. That's nothing to do with dilution, but it's a really good tip for keeping your airbrush clean and kind of stopping you having issues and all that jazz. So finally, from like the little questions that I've got that I've picked up from the last episode, can you varnish? Can you use inks? Blah, blah, blah. You can use anything, absolutely anything. If it is a liquid painting medium, whether it's Artis acrylics or otherwise, one of our regular viewers, you pointed out, make sure you do varnish after those, otherwise they will literally rub off some of the Artis inks. Yeah, you want to just dilute appropriately. We'll cover that in the next episode, and then bear in mind pressure and distance and stuff like that, again, for the next episode. But you can put pretty much anything through an airbrush. If you are putting varnishes through your airbrush, it is the most important of anything you're using, unless you're using contrast paints or washes that dry like diamonds on the inside of your airbrush. Make sure you clean thoroughly afterwards, or at least leave it soaking for a little bit afterwards and then give it a clean in your next session or something like that. So yeah, varnishes are absolutely fine. One of the reasons to get an airbrush, in my opinion, is to be able to control your own varnishes. Really useful for a number of applications. Unlock some stuff with streaking grime and stuff like that, which I think is wonderful. You can put anything through an airbrush pretty much. They are super durable, and if you don't get a teeny tiny nozzle and teeny tiny needle, then you can pretty much send anything through that, which is amazing. All right, so that is it for this episode. Do let us know what you would like to see covered in the next one. I don't know if it will definitely be the dilution and pressure one, but it probably will, because that seems like the next logical step. Thank you very much for all of the interaction. I've seen a lot of points from people saying that they already have an airbrush, but they wish that they knew this stuff before they started. Maybe like me, they would have started sooner if they could find all the information in one place. So that's what we're looking to make these videos. It's also why there's a series rather than one episode, because I just don't think you can cover it in one episode if you want to keep it digestible. And really importantly to us, if we miss something out, if it's a series, it means that we can cover it in the next one. We're going from all the way from beginner to wherever we can end up. And hopefully the end of that is going to be us involving airbrushing with dry brushing and washes, and maybe using it to apply things like streaking grime and stuff like that. So we should be able to arm everyone with literally, not everything, but as much as possible, as much as we are capable of providing to help you on your airbrush journey. That is it. Please do check out Kyrios' channel to see a complete beginner being taken through some steps with one of the airbrushes we've spoken about. Do check out the website where we've put the sale, and it's been extended for a little bit. Some people asked if we could, so thank you very much for your input. We're extending it a little bit just to be able to catch you all with this stuff. There's some bundles on there. You don't have to go for the bundles, pick whatever. If you are interested, pick whichever airbrush and compressor seems like it's the best for you. And if you've got any questions about those, just let us know and we'll get you sorted. Hopefully that should be everything. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next episode.